All right, so you're interested in becoming a non-commissioned officer to become a sergeant in the United States Army, and there is a little bit of a process that goes along with that, so let's cover it. What's up, my friends? U.S. Army veteran Christopher Chaos, and today we're talking about how do you become a sergeant in the United States Army, and maybe even some tips as far as what you can do to help yourself along in that process. Now, if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, you want to learn about the United States Army, you want to further your career in the Army, you want to just learn about the Army because you're curious, that kind of thing, well, this is the channel that you want to subscribe to, so hit that subscribe button, click on that bell so you get alerts as soon as new videos go live, to include my live streams, so you can become a part of that awesome notification platoon. So let's dive into what is actually entailed with an individual trying to become a sergeant in the United States Army. So of course, first thing, you gotta rank up to it, okay? It's not gonna be a given type of thing. There are ways that you can just automatically get sergeant, like if you go special forces, you can kind of do it with a few other enlists, like I think that like the band one, you can do that with. There's a couple other ones, I think like if you're doing like PSYOP, then you can kind of do that with that. But for the most part, you know, if you're not going that avenue, you probably already know that those are ways you can do it if you're interested in that kind of a thing. But for everybody else, you gotta work your way up probably. You can jump a little bit, like if you have a bachelor's degree, then you can jump to specialist already, which is the one rank just below sergeant, but everybody else might have to work a little bit more to work your way up to that point. So there's different requirements as far as getting through those ranks, and I actually have a video on like how to get through those ranks as fast as possible if that's your kind of career path you want to go over, and I will hit that up in a card right there, also in the description box down below. But you're eventually gonna get to the point of specialist, whether that's because you worked your way up through the ranks or boom, you came in the Army as a specialist because you had that bachelor's degree. Even if you had that bachelor's degree, regardless, you still need at least 2 years in the Army, and that is like the earliest kind of a phase. And that's, sometimes it's still a difficult thing to even go and get promoted to sergeant with only 2 years in the Army. Some people have to wait until about 3 years in the Army, 4 years in the Army. It kind of depends on some other factors. But 2 years is gonna be the bare minimum. That's if you're really high speed, you get recommended for the board, maybe you came in as a specialist, then sure, maybe at 2 years, then you possibly could have the potential of trying to get recommended for the board, going through everything, and I guess I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but there is a process, and let's kind of dive into that process, I guess. So you have the time requirements. Now you need to get your leadership to want to send you to the promotion board. You're gonna get to a certain point where they're automatically gonna try to send you to the promotion board. If you're trying to go as soon as possible, then you gotta probably start bugging them, being like, you know, telling your leadership, hey, I'm really interested in going to the promotion board, and if you've been proving yourself, then they might be willing to do that. So what is the promotion board, for those of you that don't know? So the promotion board is a panel of other non-commissioned officers. Usually you have like maybe a platoon sergeants. A lot of times it's like first sergeants and the sergeant majors. So usually have these higher ranking NCOs that are a part of this board, and they're gonna be grilling you on Army questions, military questions, to see if you're really ready to be a leader. I mean, you got questions like history of the Army. They're gonna ask like about current events. They're gonna probably ask about just general knowledge about your uniform, about like regulations, about manuals, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of different ways you can study for that. I've seen a lot of websites. There's like I think the big common one that I know a lot of people kind of utilize is like armystudyguide.com type of thing. I know that was like a big one I would always use, and a lot of other soldiers to use. It's still an active website. It's been around for like a while, and that's a big one that a lot of people would like to use. There's also books out there and other websites too, but you can kind of use a combination of a lot of resources to be able to kind of find the good information to study to be prepared for the board. You'll probably have like maybe a month, maybe 2 months kind of a thing to study for the board. And a lot of times what a lot of leadership will do is try to send a soldier to something like a Soldier of the Month board, which is very similar to a promotion board, to kind of let them get a little bit of practice before they go off to the NCO board to try to make sergeant. And that's probably a good recommendation of something to do. I mean, I went through that. I went to the Soldier of the Month board. I didn't win the Soldier of the Month board, but it gave me a good experience as to what to kind of expect. And that's a good kind of stepping stone to get your feet wet with what it's gonna be like during a board, and then, you know, go to a promotion board, rather than a promotion board being the first board you ever go to and you just totally bomb it. A given thing that you're gonna be asked on the promotion board is to state the NCO creed. So you're gonna wanna memorize the non-commissioned officer's creed, the NCO creed, word for word, and probably even try to be able to maybe start somewhere in the middle, because sometimes they'll mess with people, or just to see if you're on your toes and able to kind of keep focus. And you'll start doing the NCO creed, and then in the middle of the NCO creed, ask you a question, and then they'll want you to continue where you left off at. And if you can't continue where you left off at, well, then I guess you gotta start over. And that's, you know, sometimes fine too, but you know, it's an important thing of making sure that you know that NCO creed by heart. So you're trying to study for this board, and it's not too big of a deal if you don't know every single answer, but you gotta be confident in your answers, and if you don't know the answer, you gotta sound smart about it. Like one way of doing so that I always remembered was, you know, if you didn't know the answer of the question, then you'd be like, you know, Sergeant Major or First Sergeant, whoever it was to ask the question, be like, I don't know the answer to that question at this time, but I know I can reference it from AR, whatever, right? If you know where you could find the answer, that's a good kind of point, because I don't think that, you know, First Sergeant, Sergeant Majors, other leaders expect you to know every single thing. They don't know every single thing, but you should know how to find the answer. So that's usually the key thing, is that they understand that, you know, if you don't know the answer, that's understandable, but you should know where to get that answer. Now, you can't get away with that for every single question, obviously. I mean, you're gonna have to know a good handful of stuff, but if there are some questions here and there that you don't know the answer to, you don't remember the answer to, then that's the good kind of out of that kind of situation, is to make sure you know where you could find the answer to whatever it is they're asking you about. So once you go through that process and you've passed, all right, you've been recommended for promotion, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is you wanna go off to the NCO Academy. And the names have changed quite a bit over like the last several years, kind of a thing. When I went through, it was PLDC, which is the Primary Leadership Development course, then it changed to the Warriors Leaders course. Now I believe currently it's the, what is it? BLC, the Basic Leaders course. So, I mean, you know, the names change all the time, but there's an NCO Academy you have to go through, typically a 2-week type of thing. It used to be at one point in time a 1-month thing, then they shortened it down to 2 weeks type of thing. So you have to go through this kind of, you know, leadership course, this NCO Academy, graduate from it, and then that's just probably just another step towards getting promoted to a sergeant. Now, with the way it currently works, if you meet those 2 requirements, you're gonna get promoted to corporal. Some people hate that kind of a thing, but in some ways it's kind of good, because it's gonna allow you to have a little bit of leadership experience. I mean, it's more responsibility for the same pay, so yeah, that does suck, but in the end, you do kind of get put into a leadership position to a certain extent to kind of learn a little bit and maybe be a little bit better when you do get promoted to sergeant. It still kind of sucks sometimes for some people. You know, some people don't mind. I didn't really mind it too much. I got stuck in that situation even before they went to that automatic promotion to corporal type of thing that they do now. But I did learn some stuff from it. I mean, there was some moments where it kind of sucked because you're just doing extra work for the same pay, but I did gain some knowledge out of it and did gain some good experience. Thankfully, I was only in that position for 1 month before I was able to get promoted, and the way you need to get promoted is by making cutoff. So that means that you have to have the right amount of points to make promotion, and those points change each month based on the needs of the Army. So if the Army, let's say for an 11 Bravo, really needs E5s for the next coming month, then that month the points might be really low to make it easier to achieve those points to get promoted. If it's a situation where they already have a lot of NCOs, a lot of E5s, a lot of sergeants already in that MOS, then the points might be a lot higher to make it harder to get promoted. That way they're not oversaturating with too many NCOs, too many E5s, too many sergeants, and they don't need that. That is actually probably even harder on the Reserves National Guard side, because their points usually end up being really high for a lot of their MOSs, and that's mainly because if you're in a specific unit and they only have, let's say, 3 slots for a sergeant in your unit, and they already have sergeants in that kind of slot, well then the points are gonna be extremely high to be not really achievable. So it makes it harder. Whereas on active duty side, if your unit only has, let's say, 3 slots in that same example for someone to get promoted to sergeant, and there's already 3 NCOs in that spot, well then they're just gonna move you to another unit. They can't really do that on the Reserves National Guard side because you're kind of tied to that reserve unit based on where you live and everything. Where on the active duty side, they can send you wherever the hell they want you to. So if they wanna move you to another installation, to another unit, to another country kind of a thing, to another unit over there, overseas or whatever, then they can do that to put you into a slot that is available. So you'll often see that it is much harder to make sergeant in the Reserves and National Guard compared to how it is on active duty. So how do you get those points? Well, that comes from a lot of things. I mean, I have a video that breaks down the points and how much they're worth type of thing. So if you want to check that video out, I've got a card up there, a link down in the description box. But to kind of give you a quick rundown without getting in depth like I do in that video, I mean, you got things like education, you got military training, you got civilian education, you have your physical fitness score. Did I already mention that one? I don't remember. You got your weapons qualification. So there's a lot of different factors in there that earn you some points, right? I mean, For some MOSs, you may only need like 15 points. I was talking to a soldier the other day and they needed 15 points to make sergeant. Well, hell, you pass the physical fitness test, you're gonna have more than 15 points. But there are also some MOSs that are 798, and that is things like maxing the physical fitness test, get an expert on weapons qualification, maxing military education. You probably have like an associate's or a bachelor's degree type of thing, all sorts of things to be able to get that high. That's a really difficult thing to get that high in the points. So that's a lot of the down and dirty as far as how do you get E5, but you wanna know what do you need to do to get there. Well, there's some things in your Army career that you need to do to help make that process a little bit better. Obviously things like not getting in trouble, right? That can definitely slow down the process. You're getting in trouble, you're reduced in rank, whatever, you're leaving a bad image to your leadership, they're not gonna wanna send you to the promotion board just yet. So you gotta make sure you're doing the right things. You're showing up on time, you're listening to what they tell you to do and executing properly, and just really paying attention and soaking up as much knowledge so that way they see that you're interested and you're eager to learn and you are ready to become that leader to lead other younger soldiers. Making sure you stay in great shape. I mean, if you go and you fail a physical fitness test, you get overweight type of thing, that can bar you from promotion. That can hold you back because if you can't pass a physical fitness test or you can't make height and weight, then they're not gonna promote you. So you're gonna have a hard time getting promoted. So you gotta make sure you stay on top of those things. One of the big factors a lot of times, especially with MOSs that have high point standards, is making sure that you're gonna have enough points when the time does come. For some people, like I said, all you really gotta do is be breathing and you'll probably be good. But for some other MOSs, it's not quite that easy, and you gotta be doing things like correspondence courses. I have actually on my website, I have a link down below as well for that. If you go to ChristopherChaos.com and there's a links section, there's a lot of useful links on that website. One of them is the links to go to the website for correspondence courses, and you have to be already in the Army for that because you have to use your ID card to log into a computer to be able to gain access to that website. But you gotta start doing that kind of stuff, right? You gotta go and get those points up so that way you can build up points in the military education side. If you are awesome enough and you have time to be able to do maybe some college courses on your spare time, that's usually pretty hard on active duty, but that is a great thing to do. If you have that opportunity, go for that. I was in a situation where that was not kind of the case, and there's a lot of people that I know that don't have that luxury of being able to do that, but I've also talked to people that did have that opportunity where they had a lot of downtime and they were able to take maybe a couple, online courses here and there, maybe not something to the extent of being able to get like a bachelor's degree or maybe even an associate's degree, but a few courses here and there when time allowed. Probably if someone did get a bachelor's degree and associates while they're on active duty, it probably took them a really long time. So don't expect that you're gonna get an associate's or bachelor's degree. You'd have to be pretty lucky if you were in that situation. I'd imagine that's a very, very rare thing. And if it did happen, it probably took someone like 5-6 years or maybe more. But like I said, one of the things that earns points is your physical fitness score. So making sure that you give a lot of effort during physical fitness, doing some physical fitness on your own time, because a lot of times physical fitness in the morning is more meant to maintain standard. If you're looking to excel in standard, that takes a little extra work most often. So you might want to have to spend a little bit more time working on your physical fitness so that way you can score higher on that ACFT to get better points. So eventually, let's say you go through all those things. You make points and everything, you get promoted to sergeant. Now you're a sergeant and you can still work on points because staff sergeant still relies on points. After staff sergeant, you don't have to worry about boards anymore, you don't have to worry about points anymore, but for E5 sergeant and E6 staff sergeant, you do have to worry about that stuff. So it's good even to continue working on stuff even after you already get promoted to E5 to sergeant, because if you want to make it to E6 to staff sergeant, you're gonna need a lot of that same stuff. I was not super motivated to want to make sergeant when I was in the United States Army, but I did end up doing it, and I think it took me about 5 years, I think it was. I probably could have made it sooner, but again, I wasn't super motivated. I kind of got pushed into that kind of position and then kind of just, went for it kind of from there. But some people can make it easier in less time than that. Some maybe takes a little bit longer, especially on certain MOSs. But for those of my viewers out there that maybe are currently in the Army, that maybe have made it to sergeant, or veterans out there, I'd love to hear down in the comment section, maybe, leave me a comment. How long did it take you to make it to sergeant? But question of the video, what is your goals for the United States Army as far as rank? What would you like to get it up to? Are you a person that, maybe just wants to do 4 years, you'd be happy with making specialist and get out of the Army? Maybe you would like to make it at least sergeant? Are you someone who wants to retire and become sergeant major? What is your goal? What rank would you like to get to? Whether you're someone who wants to join the Army or someone who's currently in the Army, leave the comments down below for the question of the day. What rank would you like to get to in the United States Army? But really, the real tip here is if you want to know how to make E5, you know what you got to do? You got to make E6. It's a running joke that some people have in the Army, meaning that, once you become an E6, you're probably gonna get in trouble and get busted down to E5. So people would always say, the best way to make E5 to make sergeant, make E6. You'll probably get busted down at some point in time and be back to being E5. Don't do that though. I don't recommend that. Check out the videos wherever they're at, links in the description box. See you guys.